Hello, hello. I hope that you are awake, and I'm super glad to be here today. It's been a while that I'm missing JS Poland, but this year I wanted to be here so badly. So I want to start telling you a story. Towards the end of last year, I started thinking, okay, so let's analyze where the micro-frontends community have done so far and what we have reached in the last few years. And more I was going inside the rabbit hole, I started to discover that there are some things that were currently missing. And I start to list them, and this one is one of the many that were missing. So today I want to walk you through a work that took roughly 12 months for getting there, with a bunch of also people working behind the scene. My name is Luca. I'm a principal serverless specialist based in London, and I'm an international speaker and a books author. So usually when you work with single-page applications, you have like your artifacts that might be composed by one single JavaScript file or multiple of them, and then you deploy in production, very easy, unique entry point, and off you go, you have what you need. But when we talk about micro-frontends, the complexity starts to explode because you start to have multiple independent artifacts and applications that will allow you to deploy them independently. And it's not an easy thing if you think about that. Micro-frontends are lacking of opinionated discovery and delivery message. I think we have done an amazing job on defining what micro-frontends is. We have done a great job on composing micro-frontends, on server-side rendering, on client-side rendering. And also on the routing part, we did a good job. But what we are missing at the moment is the discoverability part. Let me show you what I mean. So usually, vast majority of the examples that you find out there, or several companies that I have followed in the last few years that are embracing micro-frontends, start with static import. So this is an example with single SPA, where you have an import map and you describe all the different files that you want to load, and single SPA take care about composing your micro-frontends for you. Same thing on module federation. In module federation, vast majority of the time, you configure your module federation plugin on Webpack, and there you have like a list of all the remotes that you are going to use for that specific application. But what about dynamic import? Vast majority of the time, what I have seen is people that are trying to figure out other solution for handling the dynamic import, starting from a static one. But we need to answer the question, which micro-frontend should I load? And that is a very important question, because if we are capable to decouple those two things, we will be able to then use in multi-environments our solution, and basically we became unstoppable on that side. When I started to think about that, I had to review what others have solved similar problems. And the first things that came to my mind is looking into microservices. If you're in microservices, there is a pattern that is called service discovery, where basically you rely on a registry that is the service discovery, where in the service discovery, you collect all the IPs and other metadata of a specific microservice. So when there is a request, you never call directly or baked inside the code of a microservice the IP for another one, because you know it might change. And therefore, what you do instead is calling the service registry with an ID, and it will return back some metadata that include also the IP to call for consuming an API. That is exactly what we are looking for here. There are other opportunities when we unlock that, because if we discover a micro-frontend, it means also that we can discover a new version of the same micro-frontend. But because we are discovering dynamically that, we can also use a new concept like de-risking the deployment, because then finally we can start to think new solution around that. We can also think about fallback alternatives, because with micro-frontends you need to take into account that it's not like a single page application where you either load or not the code. It might be that 4 micro-frontends are loaded and the fifth one is not, and you need to take care about that. Let's look at the deployment phase. There are different techniques that you can use. For instance, blue-green deployment is quite a popular one. So usually when you have a version, like in this example, catalog version 1.2.1 has 100% of the current traffic. So we deploy a new version, and the live traffic is still on the current version. So what we can do is that the development or the QA can start to play in production with the new version without any problem. And that is absolutely great because we can de-risk and make sure that what we have deployed in production, it doesn't hit prime, it doesn't bring prime time till we are sure 100% that everything is working. Then when we are happy, we can redirect all the traffic towards the new version. Another approach is using canary releases. And canary releases instead starts from the idea that you shift traffic between versions. So you deploy a new version, and then slowly but steady, you increase the traffic and look at your observability dashboards to understand if there are any failure. If you need to roll back, it's as simple as removing traffic towards the new version and going back 100% of the traffic to the previous one. It's a fantastic mechanism that both are very well known in the microservices community, but way less on the front-end side. So what I did is collecting a bunch of people and trying to solve this problem in the last year. So maybe some of you recognize some of those names. Joel Denning is the creator of Single SPA. Matteo Figus is the creator of Open Components Framework. And Zach is the creator of Mojo Federation. And we work relentlessly in the last roughly 10 months trying to understand how we can solve this problem. How can we democratize the discovery and delivery of micro-frontends? Because we have heard several times always the same question. How can we deploy micro-frontends in an easy way? And vast majority of the time, people either don't have the skills or they struggle because they have other things to do and maybe delivering features. So let's start with client-side rendering. That was our first focus. So how can we deliver the features that I mentioned so far in an application shell? So we thought that the most basic thing that we can think of is a JSON schema, more or less like you would do with OpenAPI, where you have like a schema that is quite prescriptive and will allow you to take care about everything that you would do for discovery and micro-frontend. So the schema is very simple. So you have an ID that is composed by a project ID / the name of the micro-frontend. And then what you have is the micro-frontend URL that will be loaded in case that you want to load this micro-frontend. You have also a fallback that can be pointing to a static file that maybe is available. Maybe it's not the latest version. Maybe it's, let's say, some data, but at least you show something to the customer. You have a bunch of metadata. We thought that at the beginning to start small and have the integrity and version that usually are the most common one that we have seen used by several customers when they are dealing with micro-frontends. And finally, we thought, OK, but there are other things that we can do based on the framework we are using and maybe based on the situation. Imagine, for instance, that you want to have your custom logic that is not mapped inside this JSON schema. So you can do that inside the extra object. OK, that's great. So we can load micro-frontend, and we can discover it. So now we just retrieve this JSON, and we know where to find the micro-frontend. But what about the deployment phase? So for the deployment phase, probably maybe you didn't notice, but all the micro-frontends are described with an array. And that means I can have multiple versions of the same micro-frontend available in the same JSON schema. So in this case, for instance, what we have is if the moment that we want to use canary release, for instance, we can have a deployment object that describes how I want to deploy my application. So in this case, for instance, 30% of the traffic is going to this version and 70% is going to the other one. And if for any given reason this automatic process that generated this schema doesn't work, you can also set a default. And therefore, if for any given reason the number that is composed by these two micro-frontends exceeded 100%, then at least you have something to load, and you signal to the system that is providing this JSON which one has to be served to the application shell. The benefits of this approach. Oh, first of all, it works on front-end and back-end. What I mean for that? So definitely backend, I think, is crystal clear. I have a service that returns this JSON that is resolved by you. But also, it can work with a static JSON file that runs inside the frontend. Now, maybe you are wondering, how can you split the traffic between clients? So when I pitched this idea to a friend of mine, an ex-colleague of mine, he spent like a few hours and he sent me this picture that was quite funny. I don't go through all the calculation and everything, but the idea is when you reach a certain amount of clients or browsers that are your application, then you are getting closer to that shift of traffic between between version of the same micro-frontend. So that's a good way. The other thing is it's not very opinionated. So it's just JSON. It's probably the most basic thing that we are dealing with every single day, and I like it because of that. It's extensible, so we have created the extras object where you can add your own logic, and very often I've seen customers that are saying, okay, but I need to map this specific logic, how can I do that? So we were thinking about that. And can be integrated in existing APIs. So if you have today an application that is written with micro-frontends, and the first thing the application shell does is loading a configuration, what you can do is taking this portion of JSON and squeeze in inside your API. So in one call, you have all the configuration you need, plus the discoverability of your micro-frontends. Obviously, architecture is always a trade-off. So we have also some pitfalls. The first one is that you must get this configuration before load anything. Obviously, if you are fanatic as I am and the group of people that I mentioned before on performances, you know upfront that you will impact a bit the performance. But when we started to think about the trade-off that this solution is providing, we thought that was an acceptable pitfall. Because at the end, it can be highly cacheable, this solution, and therefore, the worst-case scenario is the round trip to the CDN that probably is very close to where your customer is requesting the page. It might be too loose, so we need to think something more, and we will see in a moment what. And last but not least, for security and performance reason, we highly recommend to go with a back-end solution more than the front-end, because obviously in the front-end, you're going to have all the micro-frontends available inside the JSON, and then the application shell will take care about that. If you are interested about the project, we already published that. So it's available at this URL here, and you can start to read the reasoning behind the schema and everything. So how to facilitate the adoption? That's the other question that we thought about. So how can we do that? So first of all, we thought, OK, let's create a vanilla library that can be used with Module Federation, Single SPA, any other framework out there that basically will allow them to integrate very easily inside the system. If we are capable to build something like that, then you will be able to integrate inside your system without too much effort. And that is a great starting point. But then when we were thinking about this, we said, OK, fantastic. But then the reality is on the front-end side, very often we struggle on the DevOps part, how we are operationalizing our solution in the cloud, maybe. So if we think about the back-end implementation that I was suggesting at the beginning, what you usually have is a solution like that. So you have the application shell that is calling an endpoint, that is micro-frontend discovery, let's call this service in this way. And then that is retrieving some data from a database, and will apply some logic. So when you say, I want to shift the traffic from one version to another one of the micro-frontend, the application shell is going to get just one version that is computed on the micro-frontend discovery service, and basically is the one that has to load. And that is conceptually very easy, right? So it's not too complicated. But then we did an extra step. OK, can we create something around that? And every single of us is building different solutions. Zach has Medusa, for instance. Joel is working on another project that is going to announce soon. And also in AWS, we started to discuss about that. And with a bunch of colleagues, we started to think of how we can simplify the work for all the front-end developers. And that's where basically we started to think, OK, so we have what we call the AWS Solution Library. Solution library are vetted architecture that are available for you for free. You just click a button, deploy inside your AWS account, and then you have the solution that is up and running for you. Moreover, an AWS solution is available on GitHub. So you can clone the repo and change whatever you want inside the logic that we make, or even contribute and open a pull request and add new functionality to what we are building. So that's what we are currently doing. It's not ready yet, but we are, let's say, in a good stage, and I hope that for early next year it will be available for everyone. The idea is very simple. We are using serverless. That is a paradigm that allows you to pay for what you use and nothing more. So usually when you have a container or you have a virtual machine, you just spin up there and it's available 24/7. But vast majority of the time you don't need that. Think about, for instance, in a dev environment or staging environment. You work roughly 8 hours per day, right? So at the end of the day, that's the time that you need. With serverless, you just pay for what you use. For every call, you are going to have like a certain percentage of price that you pay, and then the infrastructure is completely managed by AWS in this case. So in this case, we have like a microservice that is composed by an entry point and a CDN that is CloudFront, and we basically apply the logic that I just described for creating canary releases and blue-green deployment using Lambda functions. But then we thought, okay, but we need to integrate somehow. We need to explain during a CI/CD process how we want to shift the traffic towards one version or another, how to publish our content between versions. And that's why we thought, okay, let's add another piece of the puzzle, another API. Why that? Because if you're using GitHub Action or GitLab's pipeline or Jenkins or whatever other CI/CD system, it's very easy to call through CLI or through a terminal command like curl, for instance, or vget. You can call an API and just describe where to find the micro-frontend and what are the patterns that you want to use. For instance, in canary release, you will be able to specify stuff like, I want to increase by 10% the traffic towards the new version every 10 minutes. We will take care inside the solution to bump up and to add more traffic every request that we are coming every 10 minutes. And that's, I think, is something that is what we call in AWS an undifferentiating heavy lifting, that we remove the burden from the customer and can be applied to everyone, to be honest. So let's recap. What we have seen so far is that the JSON schema can create new opportunities. And the beauty of this is if we are capable to have this JSON schema available and integrated in all the micro-frontends framework out there, that is my dream and also my goal, we will open up a new bunch of potential developer experiences that are out there that might be incredible. You can plug in a very complex system because you know up front that everyone will consume the specific schema. And you are not bounded to AWS or anything else. You just create potentially your own solution, you will be able to go. Moreover, we introduce and democratize canary release and blue-green deployment that are helping you to reduce the blast radius for potential bugs in production. And that is great because this is the first step that we move towards this democratization. But obviously, in my head, I would like to have also for single-page application, for static site generator, generated website, and so on. I hope that you enjoy, and if you're interested to know more, I'm around for the whole day, so feel free to ping me, ask any question. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.